I'm sitting here like I'm cranking the picture show is sliding by, like the film reel is sliding by, and I'm quickly placing slides in front to stay ahead of the party. Um, Sometimes that means that by the time they've entered a town, like technically my party's in this town of Beacon that I'm prepping right now, I still don't know a lot about it. I'm still figuring out a lot about it because it only matters for the game starting tomorrow night. Hey, Packet Pirate, thanks for the $5. How much detail is enough for your settlements? That's a really good question. So, when you think about the things that define different dungeon masters, there are a lot of different things, right? Some prefer to sort of run at the table, just stream of consciousness. They're going to improv off of the energy given to them by the party, and that's all they need. Some want to sort of prep a whole bunch of ideas and see which ones make it to the table. I, for instance, would be on the prep side. Obviously, I like improv too. The game is a little bit of both, but I'm squarely on the prep side. When it comes to inspiration for D&D, I feel like a lot of people seem to fall on like the fantasy world, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings inspiration, you know, the big fantasy maps and all of that. And hey, I have my own world fantasy map. I get inspired by that stuff too, but I actually like I liked those books when I was a kid, but that isn't what drives me in my sort of world building and my when I'm designing the game. I was inspired by things growing up like choose your own adventure books. I liked Twilight Zone. I was really into Goosebumps books. Um, you know, the sort of almost like pulpy short story, um, weird town vibes, I think, are what inspire me. So when we talk about settlements, you know, when I look at Beacon, which is the town that I'm talking about right now, um, map by Daniel's Maps on Patreon. I'll put that link back in the chat. I want to make sure I'm giving Daniel his dues for his awesome artwork here. When I think about a location like this, I'm starting from the perspective of what is weird about this place? What's noteworthy about this place? Because if there's not something weird or noteworthy about it, what are we doing here? Why would anybody bother? And so in some ways it's sort of almost like it's a type of world building, but I'm almost like it's world building around this oddity, right? And so I would compare it to something like you know, in Twilight Zone, or in stories that are about these sort of weird events and people coming to terms with what's going on and trying to understand the world around them and move through it or deal with it in some way. Everything's always seen through the lens of some weird stuff is going on. So we don't really spend much time in those stories or in choose your own adventure books or Goosebumps or you know, any of these other types of stories. We don't spend a whole lot of time in like a normal setting without something strange going on. So I look at it from the perspective of what do I need to do to establish the day to day and touches of weird. And that's kind of my framework that I sort of build out the town from. So that means that there's a lot of detail that I don't need because I'm looking at this stuff almost like episodically. Like I'm a certainly a world builder, but really I feel like I'm more like a party planner, or I'm more like I'm setting the stage in a theater production. I view the table that the group is at as the stage, and anything that comes on stage becomes real, and anything that's off to the sides or that's like behind the boards in the back is all fungible, right? It's not real yet. It doesn't have to be. Exactly. No casual and uneventful tourism roleplay. Yes, as little of that as possible. And so what's fun about that, um, and honestly for me, let me pull up a clean copy of my map. Where did I put it? Where did I put it? There it is. In the folder called Ryan's World Map. Okay. So this is, it's hard to picture all of it here. This is my world. To me, this probably tells you a lot about how I view world building and how I view what's necessary to run a game, because my world's incomplete. Obviously, there's a huge missing chunk right here. I believe that there's a bunch of ocean to the north. I have no idea what it's like. This landmass down here continues, but I haven't created any of it yet, because the areas that are created here, like this weird little landmass here, was my first campaign with a group. This section here was my second campaign with a group, and my most recent campaign gets this big massive region over here. Right now I'm working on sort of the beginnings of a seafaring campaign that I think will allow me to basically flesh out at least a good chunk of this space up here and maybe further north. But if it's not on the table, if I don't need the map to justify what's going on in the campaign, I don't even really make it. And I feel like when we talk about those lines that divide DMs, I feel like on the one hand that would really bother some DMs because they want to spend years getting their world ready for a game, and I can respect that. But on the other hand, if I don't define it, then if my next campaign is like the idea for it centers around like, well, down to the south here, that's the land of giants. It's like, oh, well, now I'm gonna design that totally differently than if I was like, oh, I don't know, it's probably, there's maybe some islands or some whatever. And so I like being flexible like that, and I also really really don't want to like waste too much time making stuff that isn't going to be affecting the game experience. And actually, it's funny because this style of map, which I would consider very like Tolkien coded, this is a very, this was my take. I mean, this is over the past few years I've added to it, and basically the same similar style. But this is definitely geared toward a certain vibe for what it means to build a world and run a game. I think nowadays what I get more excited about is a map in the style of this. So I also drew this map just a few weeks ago, and this is for my my seafaring mini campaign, which takes place on this island. It's called the Odyssey of the Prismatic Isle. My goal is to try to run a campaign in like 10 sessions, which is very, very difficult for me. But my approach to making this map was it's actually following great inspiration from a creator on YouTube called Map Crow. It might actually be Map Crow, all one word. I'm not sure. But they have this amazing video about basically trying alternatives to sort of the typical fantasy map and focusing on sort of points of interest, right? So rather than making this look like maps I've made in the past, which are like cool in a certain way, my players can look at this and go, okay, so we could go here, and maybe we could go to Medusa's Gyre, but that's on the way to Almaya Cemetery. Like, there's these visuals, and I'm not super great at drawing these things yet, but I can practice and I can get better. And it's almost like it's more like the map of an amusement park. It's more like the map of a mall. And I'm not sure this will work for like all the types of things that I want to do, but it also falls in line to, I think, that like what's the right amount to design to be ready is like, well, what do you need to get the players interested and to entice them? When I gave my players this map, it was at the end of a session, and I had not determined what would happen at any of these locations yet. So going back to my like stage play analogy or my metaphor, I'm sitting here like I'm cranking the picture show is sliding by, like the film reel is sliding by, and I'm quickly placing slides in front to stay ahead of the party. Um, Sometimes that means that by the time they've entered a town, like technically my party's in this town of Beacon that I'm prepping right now, I still don't know a lot about it. I'm still figuring out a lot about it because it only matters for the game starting tomorrow night. And this entire approach really came from early on when I was prepping a game, my first real campaign with a group that failed. It made it maybe 6 or 7 sessions and then it fell apart. But I realized through that process that, oh, all this prep I did of like multiple sessions in advance, one little decision that the party makes and it all fumbles. And I'm like, what did I spend all my time doing that for? So for the past 5+ years, I basically only prep a session at a time. Obviously, I have outlines and I have ideas, but I don't set anything in stone until basically starting the end of a session. So that there's a lot of grind every week, and it was difficult for a while to be able to figure out how I could prep at a pace to keep up. But I don't waste any time, and I stay current, and I think it ends up putting a lot more of it in my head at any one time, which is helpful too. But you've been working your role for 5 years now. 4 of those have been running my campaign, and mostly that's because I intend to publish my setting. That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach. I don't think I could do it that way. I think for me, I need the game to justify stuff existing, right? That's what drives me to figure these things out. Case in point, and just to show that it's not that I'm afraid of fleshing these things out, that I want them to be deep. I want them to be, this is for this island here, this prismatic island is populated by a group of people that call themselves the Vivid. And this is the work that I've done so far on fleshing out the Vivid's language and how they form words and populating this throughout the island. Now this is tricky to do when I'm sort of creating it as I go and trying to do the best I can to foreshadow stuff maybe a couple sessions out. But I wouldn't do this if I didn't have ideas for how it would show up to them in the game, right? I wouldn't want to create this and then like set it in a shelf or a document and move on. Like that would, I think about world building the same way that I think about crafting. As much as I have all this terrain and all the stuff that I've made behind me, there's a reason that my craft streams are called It's Not Really About the Crafting. Is because when I'm making stuff, the stuff that I'm making is for the table, to do things on the table that are going to be impactful or be memorable in some way, not to like make a mural or like some decoration for the wall like that. It's very rare that I do stuff like that, just because that's not as inspiring to me as like directly impacting the time at the table. It's purpose because it cuts down the amount of time I need to spend on each session. So yeah, I get that. That's the tricky thing. Like I don't want to disparage people who are so inspired by Lord of the Rings, because it doesn't really do that much for me. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with their games, and I'd probably enjoy most people's games if I played in them. Same thing here. Like it's not to cast aspersions on any style, just trying to explain why I do it this way. Soulkeeper, how would I run a slot campaign? It's funny you say that, because that's the sea monster that's beseeching this beacon, this town of Beacon. Now, it's not Slods completely, totally as the lore suggests. I'm changing it, but the base core level monster is a Slod. Or they're Slotty, however you're supposed to say for multiple. So for this arc, the party has been infected werewolf style and is turning into sea monsters, or has already turned into sea monsters. It's a Slod that infected them and has infected basically the entire town. So the tricky thing for this arc, the tricky thing that I'm trying to pull off, is that I want... See you, Rodrigo. I want the party to feel like they're losing track of time, and while kind of investigating the town and trying to get into this lighthouse, which seems to be the focal point of this strange activity, come to terms kind of on their own time, come to an understanding of what's happening to them. And I think initially they'll think, I think we're transforming. But the big revelation is that, oh, no, they're fully transformed. They may find clues to their transformation throughout the day, but every night the reason that they're losing track of time is because that's when they transform and stalk the region, stalk the hills, attacking people. And for the next couple of weeks, the party's time will be discombobulated. So what does that mean? That means that I think I need a whole section for this. I've never tried something like this before, and I think it's a really cool idea that is like really challenging my ability to 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 plan it out. So I think I just need to break it down a bit more. That usually means make more documents. Big long sheets I'm finding are like impossible for me to keep in my head. So start breaking it down.